I found it scary. Hello, my Pikachu-loving, Pokeball-throwing friends. I am Arlo, and today I am here to finally review Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, which, as I do in all of my Pokémon reviews, I will be referring to as one game because it's easier and because it is one game. To say that Scarlet and Violet is divisive is an understatement. Reception to Sword and Shield felt a lot more negative overall, and Legends Arceus felt a bit more on the positive side, with a lot of people feeling kinda about it rather than outright hating it. But Scarlet and Violet, wowee, you got loads of people who have had a blast with it, and also loads who feel it is a travesty. I myself was extremely critical of Sword and Shield. That game appalled me on multiple levels. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were even worse. They felt so far below Nintendo's standard of quality that it was just embarrassing. I thought it was lazy, cynical, cash-grabby junk. And those are not words I throw around casually. But then I ended up loving the heck out of Legends Arceus. It wasn't without its flaws, but it offered me the most fun I had had with Pokemon since I was a teenager. It fulfilled so many of my Pokemon-related dreams. Since my Pokemon opinions are kind of all over the place, clearly, I was really curious to know how I would feel about Scarlet and Violet. This is, after all, the very first truly open-world Pokemon game. That's a huge step for the series. After so many recent disasters, could they possibly stick the landing? Was Legends Arceus a good sign of things to come? Would this aging adult man enjoy the latest Pokemon game? Well, I've finally got my answer. If you would like to know the answer as well, then stick around while I ramble that answer at you for like a million years. Here we go, whoosh! Pokemon Scarlet and Violet run like trash. Might as well just come right out and say it. We might as well start there. That's the thing with this game. That's the whole thing. So let's just get it out of the way. It runs horribly, so poorly. It is the worst performing first/second party Nintendo game I've ever played that I believe ever exists, and like to such a huge degree as well. You know, I mean, like, okay, so the resolution, pretty darn low. We've seen a lot of pretty low resolution games on the Switch. This one is quite low. No anti-aliasing. Things are very, very jaggy. And, you know, like, it's a big, huge open world, so elements pop in like crazy. So it just gives off this really just janky, gross kind of feel. A lot of visual elements just kind of don't mesh. It's clear. It's just that it's very uneven. They had time to polish some elements, but not others. Not most of them, and you know, just looking out over the landscape, you know, it's probably supposed to look cool, it's supposed to look epic, and it kind of does to a degree if you kind of use your imagination, but it also just looks really just muddy and gross. Then you've got your glitches. I myself did not really come across too many glitches. I want to say it might be more of a multiplayer thing, I'm not sure, but I've seen a lot of pretty amazing ones online. So it is more of a thing than it has been in past Pokemon games. And then crashing. The game crashes too much. It's not a ton, it's not a huge amount, but it is every once in a while. And like, it's usually okay because the game autosaves pretty consistently. I've never like really lost a bunch of progress or anything. It's not a huge deal, and yet still, it is like I've never had a Nintendo game crash this much. Like, that's not even really a thing, and yet it's a thing that happens fairly commonly with this one. But then, of course, the biggest issue is the frame rate. And it's weird because different people seem to have different experiences, and we still don't know exactly why. Lots of people right now are piping up to tell me, no, it makes a difference if you run it on the system memory versus if you have it stored on an SD card. And I heard that, and I thought, oh good, this is gonna help fix my game. And I checked, and it was already running on the system memory. It's already there. I feel like my game runs worse than most people's. I don't know. Is it just random? Is it just random? Is there some other element we don't know? I'm not sure. Most of the footage in this review was captured by Yoshiller and his experience. He edited the video. But right here, you're seeing some footage from my game. This is my experience. Not every area is as bad as, I mean, like, this is particularly bad. But the fact that there's entire sections of the game, entire areas that just run in slow motion, especially like one, like right near the beginning, you start the game and I start the game and I'm running in slow motion. And that's really disappointing. Really, really disappointing. The frame rate overall, really inconsistent, just really bad. And like, if when I play long enough, I can kind of get used to it. To a degree, it never looks good, but I kind of get, I don't know, you just get used to it. A little like desensitized to it. But whenever I return to the game, like in preparing this review, I returned to the game to like remember some stuff and check some stuff out while I was writing. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like it's kind of nauseating. Like getting back into it, like genuinely, there is something disorienting about just how choppy and bad it looks. Like it's clear, like I don't mean this literally, but like this game feels like a bad indie game, like a bad one, like where someone, you know what I mean? Like this like pre-alpha game and they just kind of threw it together in Unity and like it's all just kind of like choppy and weird. Not exactly like that, not literally, because you can look at it and you can see that there are more elements to this. This is not all stock assets. You can see some handcrafted stuff. There, obviously, like realistically you look at it and you can tell, but like that's still the vibe that it gives off. You know, it looks like a pre-alpha game that has just not been polished at all or properly optimized for the hardware. It looks like a game that we should have never seen. It looks like an early version of the project. And this whole thing is, I want to say unacceptable. I want to say that. Because to me, if I were at any part of this process, if I were involved at the company, I would say unacceptable. I would say this is not even allowed. You cannot do this. Obviously, to some degree, it is acceptable because they did it and they got away with it and people bought it and they made a lot of money. And it's frustrating to me that there wasn't more of a backlash. And like there was a good amount of backlash, but like not even necessarily just from like paying customers and like, you know, angry people on the internet, but like the rest of the industry. You know, like, I don't know, like other big companies, they have quality standards, you know? Like, there are a lot of companies out there, evil companies, doing a lot of really bad stuff, releasing shoddy projects and stuff, but like, there's still a certain standard of quality, even if it's like an illusion of quality. And I feel like I've never seen a company this big and this successful be this willing to release a product in this kind of state. Even bad companies who release like these unfinished buggy games, their games still don't look like this. They don't run like this. Even ones with like the reputations for buggy games, this is beyond that. Maybe it's just because it's on Switch and it's weaker or whatever, but like, I don't know, there's still like a veneer of quality that this just doesn't even have. It doesn't have the benefit of like, well, if you glance at it, it looks okay. Clearly not, because like I could tell even before the game released, they're not showing us a lot of overworld footage. They show us these teeny little clips because they knew how bad it looked. It's so far beyond anything I've seen from a company of this size. And I don't know, it just feels like somebody somewhere should have been there to stop them and be like, are you serious? Like, this is really a thing that you're doing? It's disgusting. It's completely disgusting. It's embarrassing. Whoever, I promise I'm not going to do this the whole review, but whoever made the decision to launch it in this state has zero pride in their work. I'm willing to make that judgment. Even the coldest, most calculated business person should know that you cannot ship a product in this state. Not, at least not when you're shipping massive, humongous blockbusters. It makes you look so ridiculously inept. It's the kind of thing that would make even the shrewdest CEO of whatever huge world-controlling tech company go, seriously? Really? You can't do that. Even if you're being evil, there needs to be some semblance of quality. I mean, look at Disney. Like, they're as cold and calculating as they come, but like, they're not going to release the next Marvel movie with a bunch of, like, unfinished effects and, like, green screen problems and, like, glaring visual errors. Like, they're not gonna do that. That's not an option for them. They've got a reputation to maintain. It doesn't matter if they're not gonna get it out for the summer season. The movie, at the very least, needs to be finished. It's gotta be finished. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet are not finished. Sword and Shield were worse games in my eyes for reasons that we will exhaustively cover in this review. But like, it was more the design that I found like more bad than anything. But like, at least at a glance, that game was more or less finished. At least like in the trailer, you're like, oh yeah, this is a product. You're giving me a finished product. But not here. And you know what? It's very much possible that a lot of this is on the development team's abilities. But of course, even if that is the case, it's hard to see any of this as being their fault. You know, there's the idea that these people started out developing 3DS titles, or maybe even earlier ones, and, you know, it hasn't been easy for them to make that shift to 3D HD console games. And, like, yeah, if that's the case, then obviously not their fault at all. That's the Pokemon Company's fault for not properly training them, not bringing in other people who could do what needed to be done. Why didn't they hire new people who specialized in making these kinds of games? But here's the thing, even if none of that is true, even if this team perfectly know, like, they know how to make a game, then, like, it is clear that this was rushed so to such a degree. I don't even want to say rushed. It's like, oh, rushing to the finish line. They didn't even reach the finish line. They were still a mile away, and they just shipped it and called it good. They just stopped a mile away from the finish line and went, okay, race done. It needed more time, not just to be polished, but something so much deeper. It needed, like, well, I don't know. I'm not a game developer, but like at least a year, probably, maybe. And that's what's really sad, is just like, this was just so avoidable. So incredibly avoidable. Like, they could have delayed Arceus to the end of that year, and it would have been better. And then this would have come out the following year. Both games would have been better, and that's still a Pokemon every year. That's still a Pokemon every year, which is already too many. It's so disappointing that this Pokemon game, will always be tainted by getting pushed out too soon. And it's sad because it means they'll probably never fix it. There's like this idea that when the DLC comes out, maybe they'll do a patch or something, but I don't know. It's been quite a long time since they released the game. I don't know if they plan on it. There's no real promise to fix it. It already feels kinda too late by now, even if they did fix it. It's just like, really? Seriously? After the 20 million people already played it? Whatever. So here's another thing that makes this even sadder, but also somehow better simultaneously. I know that's funny, but hear me out. So Sword and Shield looked better at a glance, or, you know, like I said, at least more finished. But upon closer inspection, many of its elements looked really bad. Really bad. The environment had this just very unnatural, unrealistic, just kind of artificial kind of feel to it. Scarlet and Violet look awful by comparison because it's not finished and because of the poor performance and everything, but its visual foundation is much stronger. If both games were given the dev time that they deserved, I believe Scarlet and Violet would be much, much better looking. And this is sad because it's such a wasted opportunity. You know, it's just such a stupid thing for us and the game and the devs themselves to be robbed of. Simply because these games just absolutely can't be delayed under any circumstances ever. It's just completely senseless. But if we want to start spinning things in a more positive light and get away from this foundation itself is enjoyable. It's not always as easy to see and appreciate it as I would like, but it's there. This massive natural environment it's very exciting. I love the more natural look of the landscape, you know? It looks a lot more real. I love how all the different biomes flow together. I love being able to see so far off in the distance. The world really does have this really grand scope. It feels absolutely sprawling, climbing a tall mountain and gliding over the landscape. It's thrilling. It might not be rendered well, it might not have as much detail as it could, and it might chug like crazy, but there's still value in it. It's still interesting and grand. And we basically know that the team is indeed capable of polishing and making things look good, because there are lots of elements of the game that do just look plain old good. You know, fancy battle animations, like when you terrestrialize, like those are all super flashy and fun, as always. They clearly put a lot of effort into these. And anything involving people looks great. Their designs are all really terrific. A little bit more on that later. You know, they're decently animated. And you know what? There's a lot of like finer texturing details this time around that really make people and Pokemon pop more. Every once in a while, you'll see a character and like you look at their shirt and be like, look at that shirt. That shirt looks pretty good. You know, or you'll run into a Pokemon with that's been given a new texture or like a new shine to them. And you're like, yeah, all right. Like you get this little, like a glimpse of what Pokemon could be, of what it could look like if they had more time and put more money into making it look better. You can see the skill at work, and these skilled elements are scarce enough that they're doing a lot of heavy lifting for the overall look of the game, but hey, they do help, and I do appreciate them. So overall, the visuals and the performance are really not great. The game just runs poorly. This is indeed a very bad problem, a really bad problem, and I could easily see it ruining the game for plenty of people. You know, like I said, it can feel kind of nauseating to watch at times. It's gross, it's unpleasant. Not everyone is willing to subject themselves to that. And of course, there are plenty of people who just won't stand it on principle. You know, like, how dare you sell me a game like this? And I can completely get behind that. I think that's great. I can absolutely respect the decision to not purchase a product released in this state. It does feel pretty insulting that the Pokemon Company thinks this is okay. But to me, the performance is the game's biggest problem. Easily, that's the worst thing. But the fascinating thing about Scarlet and Violet is that when you look past that problem, despite it being such a big problem, there's so much to enjoy. And I'm not saying the game is perfect otherwise. There are other problems, plenty of problems. Problems abound. But again, for me, there is nothing else that is major enough to kill the experience. This game is an absolute mess. But my gosh, I can't even tell you how much fun I've had with it. This is a product that was badly damaged, nearly destroyed by corporate greed. But what's left in the rubble is something that's still so surprisingly fantastic. When I look at the game, I see those privileged few on top who pushed the game out, called it a day, and high-fived each other all the way to the bank. But when I play the game, I see the folks downstairs who put as much love and care into it as they possibly could. The star of the show really is the open world. I've said it a million times, but this is something I've dreamed of since forever. Like, this to me has always felt like the place the series would inevitably reach. You know, like the pinnacle of the concept. A big world where Pokemon just live, and you can go anywhere, and you can see all the Pokemon, and you can have your own adventure. You know, working through a relatively linear series of routes and towns and all that, like, that did work. That was totally fun, and it was an especially good fit for handheld systems with 2D graphics. But this is modern Pokemon. Sword and Shield gave us a tiny crumb of a taste of what this might be like. Arceus gave us a proper taste, you know, a good bite. And this is finally it. This is the meal. It's a little underdone, you know. This part over here is kind of overdone. That's weird. You got both. And there's a couple of hairs in it I've had to pull out, but I'm still enjoying what I'm eating. You know, the meal is still good. The flavor is there. All by itself, the sense of freedom has so much value. Just the very concept of open world Pokemon makes this game click with me so hard. It's the kind of element that I'm drawn to. I just really love freedom in games. I like going my own way. Sometimes I need more than just the core gameplay, you know? Especially with a series that I have already played so much and that has really resisted changing over the years. Sometimes you put it in a new package, you open it up a little bit more, and that is enough to get me motivated again. And it totally works here. It's invigorating and empowering being able to just pick a direction and go. You just go. You'll find stuff. And it's doubly exciting because there are different Pokémon all over the place. I've criticized plenty of Pokémon games for featuring what felt like the same Pokémon again and again, all over the whole map. But the variety here feels great. Lots of different Pokemon in lots of different types of environments. You never know if you're gonna run into something new and amazing or an old favorite. And that's what being in the Pokemon world would really feel like. That was always such a fun element of the anime to me, you know, that added realism over the games. That was what I wanted. Arceus definitely helped realize that dream of a more realistic Pokemon world, where you could, you know, really discover Pokemon more organically, and I talked about that a lot in my review for that game, so I'm not going to go into the whole thing here, but this game takes the idea and makes it even bigger. Having one big world instead of isolated zones makes a really big difference. Exploring is always fun because you just never know what you'll find. And for all you know, you'll visit a place you've been to loads of times, but this time you'll find something more rare or a shiny. The freedom, the exploration, the sense of the unknown, it makes the game such a joy to just play. It's exactly what Breath of the Wild did for Zelda. Previous Zeldas, you know, I loved all of them, but I'd beat the last boss and I'd collect everything I wanted to collect, and then the game would be done. It was just done. It was time to stop playing. But Breath of the Wild, with its open concept, you know, it was just so fun and so free with so many little things to mess around with that it barely mattered what I was doing. I just liked playing. Even when I'd finished, I'd gotten everything I wanted to get. I just enjoyed being there and messing around for hours and hours on end. And that's Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. There's always somewhere to go, something to do. You can mess around off the beaten path all you want, or you can head for the next gym, or further your progress in some other part of the story, whatever you want. And we'll talk about the 3 main stories later, but I will say now that having multiple separate sets of goals, absolutely genius. You know, just there's always something major to do when you're done messing around. Wherever you go in the map, you're never more than a stone's throw away from the next, just one of the things that you should be doing. There are no areas of the map that are just completely devoid of anything. It's all got some fun stuff to do. Naturally, as you move further away from your starting point, you'll find higher level Pokemon and trainers. You know, that's how this game offers progression while still being totally open world technically. And this is great because I love the idea of having places that are way too high level for me, sneaking into these places and, like, you know, either accidentally getting totally destroyed by a wild Pokemon or even like triumphantly beating or nabbing one. It's all part of the fun. Again, same with Breath of the Wild. It's that dynamic element. It's that thing where everything is driven by me and my choices, my own ability and willingness to take risks. I love having places you probably shouldn't go, but you can if you're brave enough. It's more added realism too, you know? It's just more of that freedom. The game also offers more natural progression thanks to its landscape. It can be difficult or even straight up impossible to get to certain areas until your Koraidon or Miraidon have the right abilities. And this is really clever. It keeps the player from easily accessing every single part of the map right off the bat, but it's a totally natural way to gate things off. You know, it's not an invisible wall or a little gate with people inside who tell you you need such and such in order to go through, or a character who stops you. Instead, it's like, oh, you can't cross that river. He doesn't know how to swim. Oh, yeah, you can't jump high enough to get up there, you know? Oh, sorry, you can't go up that wall. You don't know how to climb. It feels natural and fair, you know? And it makes it really fun to get abilities. Every single time you get a new ability and you're just thinking about all the places you're gonna be able to go, it feels like it opens up the map even more. Super fun. Now, the open nature of the game is amazing, but it does have its downsides. There's kind of a little bit of pressure to not mess around doing side stuff too much, because then you can pretty easily become overleveled if you're not watching yourself. If you take a little too long to get to a gym, that gym is probably going to be a cakewalk, you know? And of course, a one-sided battle is just not very fun. I would not hate it if there was some sort of level scaling involved here. And I don't believe the whole entire game should scale with you, like some RPGs do it. I think it is better that in some places the Pokemon are higher level, some places they're lower, that's just the way it is. But I really wouldn't be against gyms. At the very, very least, gyms scaling with you, even if nothing else did, you know? I mean, like, it wouldn't be that hard. It's like, how many badges do you have? Or like, what's the average level of your Pokemon? Or just something like that. Oh, I got different teams at different levels. I'll use this one. I just feel like that would relieve that pressure to like make sure you're hitting the gyms in the exact right order and at the exact right time. Or at the very least, I would love just having some kind of like indicator on the map of like what areas are meant for the, you know, even like color coding it or just something like, oh, here, recommended level 10, here, recommended level 25. It's pretty simple. Just something to help remind you even approximately of where you should be and when. Yeah, would be nice. You'd still be free. That's the thing. You'd still be free to go wherever you wanted. It would just kind of help you. Oh well. And you know what? I mean, gyms are the main problem, but while we're wishing for stuff, some kind of indication for trainers would be nice too. You know, like, overall, I would say trainers could have been handled better. You know, like if you skip a trainer and like, that's it for that trainer. Any other time in the game, they're going to be totally worthless. Even if you're raising up a lower level Pokemon and you could use that trainer, you got no real way to like find them. Oh, I need a trainer with Pokemon exactly level 20. There's somewhere out there. I probably skipped one somewhere, but I'm not going to find them when I need them. So yeah, not the best. Just like a little indicator above their head or something. Because like you can't even tell what level they are until you are already in a battle with them. And then you're in a battle and like it's too late. It's just that, like, overall, fights really just aren't worth much unless you're evenly matched, you know? It's not going to be fun, it's not going to be any kind of challenge, and it's not going to give you enough XP to be even worth your time. So I feel like it's pretty important to make sure that as many battles as possible are going to hit that sweet spot, you know, where your levels are at least more or less even. So speaking of doing stuff on the overworld, let's talk about Pokemon and all that stuff on the overworld. I was very, very, very sad to learn that the free-throwing Pokeball mechanic did not make it over from Arceus. It gave Arceus such an incredible tactile feel and enabled all this cool, like, stealth stuff, sneaking up on Pokemon. I really loved it. Overall, just made Pokemon feel real. It made Pokemon feel like actual wild animals. Scarlet and Violet, for the most part, does away with that, which is very much disappointing. It removes a lot of the nuance. It makes the Pokemon feel less real, you know? There's just less interaction with them. However, they still wander around freely with no random encounters, which already, just that all by itself, that helps a ton. And even if we don't get to, like, interact with them and catch them in ways that are as realistic, I feel like they act more naturally than they did in Arceus. I could be wrong, but I feel like there are more unique animations. I love the way that they, like, roam around in packs. You see ones that look like they're friends, or, like, very clearly you're, like, stealing a baby from what is clearly its parent with all of its siblings. Like, there's still a really long way to go when it comes to making these Pokemon really feel like animals living in a natural environment. But it's working out pretty great. It's really not bad. I love how this game feels a lot more like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, where like they started using the realistic proportions of the Pokemon, like based on their actual like size stats in the Pokédex. It seems like they do that again here, which is really cool because it's much more realistic. At the same time, though, it is really hard to see a lot of the Pokemon. Some of them are so small, you can barely even see them, and it is a little bit too easy to just accidentally run into them. And it's also, like, kind of annoying if you, like, keep getting into a battle and then you, like, exit out, but, like, you can accidentally run into the same Pokemon multiple times. Or, like, you'll get into a battle, but then a bunch of others will, like, come and rush you so that when you get out of the battle, they're just, like, waiting there for you. It's a bit annoying. It can be a little weird. It needs a little bit more polish there. However, it is helped tremendously by the fact that entering and exiting battles is way faster than it usually is. It's no diddly 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 da da da. This thing attacks you, and you like just no, there's a little musical cue, they give their cry, boom, you're in the battle. That helps so much more than I can even say. That's the kind of thing we've needed always. We've always just, it's for wild encounters, just make it quick. What's with all of this extra stuff? I never understood it. So that's really, really nice. And I'm very, very happy to say that when you get into a battle, it's the same as it was in Arceus. You're not taken to a separate screen. Maybe that's why it took so long. It had to load the whole separate area or whatever. But no, here, like, you're on the overworld, you enter a battle, you're still there on the overworld. I love it. I love it so much. Please never go back. Please, can we just keep it this way? It's so much more immersive. It's so much better. Though I will say, it feels like Pokemon and trainers, they stand really far apart. Like, way further apart than they need to. Maybe it's just like, maybe they're always the same distance, but it's more obvious when you have smaller Pokemon. You can move the camera freely, and I just like to keep them all in the frame. I like to frame it in such a way that I can kind of see everything. But sometimes they're so far apart, like there's no real good way to get them all in. And you can like click the right stick and that turns it to like battle camera or whatever, where it's like, you know, it's more like the dynamic, the camera's panning around and different cuts and stuff. But I like controlling the camera. I really like to be able to just do it all myself. So it's a little frustrating. And gosh, I got so used to being able to run around the battlefield in Arceus. I loved that so much. You could always get the exact right angle, whatever was going on. So sad to see it go, but maybe that's something that'll come back later. I hope. And before anyone says it, yes, I know I'm comparing this game to Arceus a lot, and not everybody likes constant comparisons like that. And I know that these two games were in development at the same time, and that's why people say maybe it makes sense that they don't have all the same features. I sort of get it, but at the same time, like, the dev teams can talk to each other. They're allowed to share good ideas. And like, this game came out like 9 months later. It would not feel unreasonable to imagine them sharing some of these quality of life features. That somebody just, hey, I came up with this thing, I designed it, I developed it, I coded it, let's all use it. Like, that's not weird. But whatever, I am gonna keep comparing Arceus to this, if anything, just because I'm looking at what could make these games better and all that, and what I want to see in the future, and the direction the series is going. I like comparing a game with the previous one. It's just how I do it, okay? So you're gonna have to deal. And speaking of which, here's another one. While entering and exiting battle is smoother, the battles themselves are still really disappointingly slow. Battle speed is a big thing that I still don't quite understand. I get like the slower and more methodical the gameplay is, it's gonna be easier for like a kid to keep up with. I suppose that's really all I can think of. But then there's no reason to not just have options, give options. And I don't mean like skipping battle animations. I wanna see the animations, I just want them to go more quickly. But yeah, this game, it's pretty slow. Arceus really trimmed the fat. It trimmed a lot of the fat. So it's really, really disappointing to see this go back to the same old thing, the same old Game Boy pacing. And I want to say it might be a hair faster than it has been in the past, but still not great. Especially because, like, this is a big open world game and there's Pokemon everywhere and you are expected to get into a lot of different battles. So, like, this was a good time. Just like with Arceus, this was a good time to speed it up, get it going faster. But they didn't. And in fact, in some ways, it's worse than in previous games. At least in previous games, they would, like, pair up and combine some stat changes. Not here. There's some Pokemon right at the beginning of the game. You meet the crab and he just changes the stats all the time and it has to take you through every individual stat change and it's agonizing and I don't understand it. There's so many ways they could make it better. Why would you not? After all of these games, why would you just not? It stinks sometimes. But here's the thing about that kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that can really, really bring a game down. But it's easier to take that kind of thing when the rest of the game is otherwise fun. And I have noticed this a lot in recent years. And I noticed it a lot when playing this game and comparing it to my experience playing Sword and Shield. Two games can share the exact same problem, But that problem is more of a problem in a game that has lots of other problems too. If overall I'm not having that much fun, things like slow combat are gonna be too painful to endure, you know what I mean? And that was Sword and Shield. The rest of the game I felt was also bad. I was just not having fun, so I had less patience for even these smaller problems. But here, it's something I can live with. I don't love it. I really don't love it, but like, it's just one thing, you know? I'm having fun otherwise, so it's more of a blemish on a good experience rather than another weight added to the pile of weights weighing everything down. So yeah, battles in this game are pretty much the way they've always been, which is a bummer. I really loved all the little changes Arceus made to like status effects and buffs and debuffs and all that stuff. None of it made it here. At this point, though, I can't even say for sure that it will ever make it. Arceus really may have just been kind of a weird, I know they called it a mainline game, but it really might have just been an experimental side project to kind of see what worked. It could be that there is no intention whatsoever of bringing that stuff over. Or maybe they do, and they really just didn't have time. Maybe it's a little column A, little column B. I don't know. I know they generally don't like changing things, but who knows? What I'm even more sad about, though, is the strong and agile styles not making it over. And that's another one they really might not ever plan on doing it at all. The system was not perfect at all. Really big balancing issues, especially if you're playing online. Like, I totally get that they didn't want to do it for this one. I just want to just set the record straight, let everyone know. Personally, I love that system. It's the first major change to Pokemon's gameplay that they have basically ever implemented. I think it makes the gameplay just more deep and interesting. I want to see it back. I hope it comes back. I hope it's refined. I hope it's great. I hope it becomes a series standard. Take that, haters. Anyway, so here's an interesting thing. This is like sort of something that was brought over from Arceus. In Arceus, you know, you could free throw Pokeballs, and you can't do that here. But you can automatically send out your Pokemon. This is auto-battling, and it's similar, because in Arceus, you could throw a Pokeball to catch, but you could also throw your own Pokeball with a Pokemon in it to send it out, and that to me was probably even cooler. I really loved catching Pokemon, but I don't know, something about just throwing out my own Pokemon, something about that felt so good, so I'm really happy that at least that kind of element kind of carried over. It's not quite the same. You're not just like chucking a Pokeball. You kind of hit a button and it just sends out the first Pokemon in your party. And they'll like rush forward and start just kind of attacking wild Pokemon just all over the place. They only earn a small amount of XP compared to regular fighting, but they can go through so many different Pokemon that it really makes up for it. They can just kind of keep knocking them out, and if they fight something that's too big, it'll kind of reduce their HP. But they make it really convenient. They don't get knocked out. You know, they'll go all the way down to 1 HP and they'll come back to you crying if they're like fighting something too strong. And I really love this feature. I really do. I'm really, like, considering how much they didn't bring over from Arceus, I'm really thankful for this. It's really convenient if you want to train up, like, just a little bit before a big fight. You just want to, like, just a little bit of extra XP. It's just a more fun way to gain supplemental XP when, you know, you don't have any trainers around, you don't have any experience candy, you just need a bit. And it works so well because it's another one of those things that just plays into the whole feel of Pokemon. It just feels good to forget about the turn-based element for just a little bit and just watch your Pokemon run around and fight in real time. It's just cool. I will say though, the system does need polish. It feels a bit sluggish. You know, like the way they come out, something about it is just a little bit weird, you know, like their responses can be like kind of delayed. The slow frame rate really doesn't help either. There's just kind of like a weird feel to it. Doesn't feel as good as it should. But overall though, it's still a fantastic new feature and it needs to return. This cannot be another one of those things that shows up in one game and then they scrap it. Like, please, like there's gotta be ways to bring out our own Pokemon in more active and fun ways. That's gotta be, if this is the new format, you know, open world, if that's what you're gonna go with, these are the kinds of features that we really need. Especially because this feature kind of helps solve the issue of having your Pokemon run along with you. That's a very popular feature. Some games have it, some games don't. It kind of comes and goes. But this lets you bring out your Pokemon whenever you want and just kind of have them hanging around with you, you know? And it's a little bit unfortunate that they waited until now to give us this feature when we have like a default riding Pokemon that takes us zipping around the landscape all the time. So our other Pokemon can't usually keep up. But like, it still works. For when it works, for when you are able to use it, it's great. I've got more stuff to say about the overworld. Lots of stuff to say about the overworld. For one, the map stinks. It really stinks. I guess this is one of those growing pains things, maybe, you know? First truly open world game. They didn't really know what they were doing, but the map is just really surprisingly not good. When you open it, sometimes its orientation is based on your position, and sometimes it's fixed on the compass, and I don't really know what determines it. It doesn't show what direction your character is pointing, which is like, have you played games with maps before? Pretty basic feature. And then if you zoom out too much, it like replaces the map with this really tiny ultra zoomed out version, which like is totally useless except to show you like all the main story points. And I awkwardly zoom between these on accident all the time because I'm just trying to get a wider view, but you can't get a wider view. Then it goes all the way down to the small one. And you can't even set more than one map marker. Come on, this game has got so many things. You want to keep track of what things are in what area, things that you want to come back to, but you can really just set one destination marker at a time. So yeah, not the best map. I really don't understand it, but yeah, it's a shame. A good map is pretty darn important in an open world game, but this one does not do it. One thing I really like about this game's world is that it's covered in items. In any game where I spend a lot of time just cruising around, I love having stuff to pick up. I've gone over this a million times. Collecting stuff that I might want to use later, just maybe. It's fun, just makes me feel like I'm progressing a little bit with each pickup, you know? One thing about the world I'm less fond of, though, is that it's covered in items. Honestly, there are just too many items. It's too much. Sometimes it's items every few feet. I've got this like OCD compulsion to pick up every item in every game that I play. I want to collect everything. But if I let myself here, I will just pick up items forever. They never stop. In Sword and Shield, there were the Pokeball items that were limited and then little sparkly items that would respawn. Here, you've got the glowing Pokeball items and the sparkly items, but they both respawn. There might be some Pokeball ones that don't, maybe like some of the more like major TM ones or something. I don't know, but I do know that a lot, or maybe even most of them, do indeed respawn. So I don't even know why there are two different kinds of pickups. At least make them respawn more slowly, you know? Like, just there is never not a million billion items to pick up at any given time. This means that you can't use, picking up items as a way to see where you've gone. In any open world game, I like that. I like, oh, well, I clearly have gone over here already because there's nothing sparkly on the ground. And this also means that you will pretty rarely have to buy things from stores because you just collect all the resources you need, which is a bit of a bummer. I like to feel like I've earned this stuff to at least some degree. I like buying items and stuff. Yeah, just about never have to. Oh man, here's a real bummer. So Legends Arceus introduced this thing where if you spot a shiny Pokemon, there's this little chime and a sparkle. And this obviously helped because when you're looking out over the landscape, you might not be able to see that one teeny little bundle of pixels in the distance is shiny, that it's a slightly different color. There's just a lot to look at. And this was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And because the shiny encounter rate was the same as always, but now Pokemon were spawning all around you constantly, all the time, instead of being encountered one by one in random battles, it was so much easier to find shinies. Especially considering filling out the Pokédex made the encounter rate go up even more. And like, I could definitely see some people feeling that this made shinies, you know, less special. Maybe they like how ridiculously rare they're supposed to be. But in Arceus, like really just about any player was likely to have at least a good little handful of shinies by the end of the game. They just run across. Even if that was less special for some people, I loved it. I thought it was perfect. Because of that, I actually went on my very first shiny hunt ever. And when I finally tracked down and caught that shiny Gibble and raised up a shiny Garchomp, I was, okay, well, I wasn't super happy, as you can imagine, but like, the hunt was amazing. Shiny hunting was now a thing that I could realistically engage in, and that was one thing that made Arceus so much fun. And all of that is completely out the window in Scarlet and Violet. It's gone. This time, there is no Chime, there is no Sparkle, and that is very disappointing. Yeah, maybe they decided they wanted shinies to be rarer again. Maybe they didn't like how it went in Arceus. Maybe it's true that they really just weren't talking with the Arceus team. Didn't think of it, maybe. But it stinks, because like so many shiny Pokemon barely look different at all from their normal counterparts. And if you're talking about a very slight color difference, I'm not gonna see it. I'm not. I have a form of color blindness, and there is no possible way. I have a very hard time distinguishing just slightly different shades. And as a lot of people have pointed out, this is also an accessibility issue that runs even deeper than just like being colorblind. Anybody with any sort of visual impairment really benefited from the way it was done in Arceus. So it's really, really sad to see such a useful feature like that just get flushed down the toilet. I can only hope that it returns in the future and makes shiny hunting fun again. So in any game like this, it's open. I just love cruising around. I like to have lots of stuff to do, even if that stuff is just whatever. Simple busy work. Hide and seek games. I don't even care. Koroks. Love Koroks. They're perfect. It's just something to do. So naturally, I love how you can find all these glowing sword thingies all over the place. And you know, you find all of the glowing thingies of one color, and you open up a vault with a cool legendary Pokemon inside. It's simple. It's easy. All they had to do was like design one of these things, spread them out all over the place, and at the end, your prize isn't even like more content or story or anything. It's just a Pokemon. But I don't care. It's great. It's fun. It's something to do. I love it. Finding gimme ghouls, on the other hand, I'm not so into that. You know, I'll grab them, I'll grab their coins if I like happen to see them, but I guess I don't really care about evolving them, and that's basically all there is to do. And they respawn, so it's not like you're trying to find all of them, so yeah, they don't really do much for me. Terra Raid battles, on the other hand though, those I like. I really liked the idea of Dynamax raid battles in Sword and Shield. I did have a pretty okay amount of fun with them, but they became really annoying. They had some really big problems that kind of made them more frustrating than fun. Mainly, it was just how they had these damage caps and would just constantly put up these annoying shields at higher levels. And then the team AI was also just so incredibly bad. Sometimes it would just like, you win if your teammates actually attack. If they don't attack, you don't win. So yeah, it was often just a little bit too like tedious and annoying. And I know you're supposed to play online, but the online was terrible, so I never did. I could never connect with anyone. So Terra Raid battles have been really greatly refined. You know, the whole shielding thing, it's not nearly as much of a problem. They're not nearly as like aggressive about those damage caps and those shields. Team AI feels a lot better. Maybe it's not actually a lot better. Maybe it just kind of feels that way because the battles move quickly enough. But they move quickly enough because the whole thing is now in real time. It just, for whatever reason, they just opened it up. It's all real time. Whenever you can, you select an attack and you do it. And it's great. It gives the battles just a flow. Just a really nice, quick flow. It kind of reduces my fatigue of the repetition of these raid battles, so I can just kind of do like a whole bunch in a row. Just a lot more fun overall, and I'm really, really glad. I know it's probably largely because of Pokemon Go, but I'm really glad that they're keeping around the whole raid battle thing, because it's just a great idea. It's really great. I always love the idea of just like, you know, it's like a boss battle version of a Pokemon, and everybody's ganging up on it. That's just such an incredibly cool idea, so happy to see that improving. happening. On the subject of terastallizing, you know, I really do like it. And I know it's just another, your Pokemon powers up super strong temporarily once per battle gimmick. It's so incredibly similar to the other times they've done that. But I honestly think it's my favorite. I just think it's cool. Like, visually, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think getting all, like, crystally is cool, but then, like, big silly hats is a little bit less cool. Little bit funny. Mechanically, though, I really, really like it. I think it's a really clever idea. The idea of suddenly changing a Pokemon's type and, you know, your opponent probably doesn't even know necessarily what that type is going to be. So that just, I don't know, it really just can change the tide of battle. It can do a lot strategically. And you know, I don't play competitively, but I can very much imagine that, like, that really matters. Like, what Terra type you choose and when to bring it out. Like, that's, I don't know, that's a big deal. That can really affect your strategy. And within the game, it's actually a bummer that it's not used more against you. You know, I guess for pretty much any major battle, the fact that it can only happen once per battle, so it never takes up more than just a small amount of a battle and your overall playtime. But I do like it, though. You can memorize Pokemon and their types and their moves all you want, but, like, that Terra type change, like, that's that one little element you can't always predict. So I know terastallizing won't survive the jump to Gen 10. They'll have a different temporary power-up kind of thing. I don't know how many more they can do, but they keep doing them, so there'll be something different. But one new feature I definitely could see sticking around is Scarlet and Violet's multiplayer. Now, this is something I've not been able to mess around with very much, sadly. There was once a time in my life when this would have been my life. You know what I mean? Like, this would have been it. If I were young enough, there would have been a summer that was just spent doing this, because somehow they did it. They made a Pokemon game with multiplayer, and not just like a thing where you can see each other's avatars and join up for raid battles. No, like, it's straight up multiplayer. You can actually explore the same world together. You're not even tethered to each other. You're all just kind of there together. You can do your own things, or you can join up and hang out together. And it's really cool. Like, it's certainly not perfect. There's still some awkward elements, and you know, like I said, I haven't done it very much, so I'm not surprised to hear a lot of people saying that the online needs some work, because of course it does. But you know what? Overall, it's incredibly cool. You know, like, one time there was a raid battle I just couldn't beat. So I called up a buddy. He hopped into my world, just like physically traveled to the same place that I was, and we both just kind of entered the raid battle and did it together. And it was so cool. And that is just such an incredibly big step for Pokemon, you know? Like, it's another thing I can absolutely praise this game for, even if it's still got a long way to go. Like, I already love this game, but I could see multiplayer adding a whole new dimension to the fun for the right people. I can only imagine how awesome it would be to just, like, constantly be adventuring with your friends, and they're always hopping onto each other's worlds, and you're sharing all these experiences in real time. And knowing that future games will undoubtedly improve upon the multiplayer element is very, very exciting. This really is the next step for Pokemon. We've come a long way since link cables, haven't we? Still lots of individual things to talk about, because this is a big game, so I'm just gonna start tackling them. Scarlet and Violet's menu, like the one that pops up when you hit X, it's great. Pokemon has, you know, they've made a lot of different changes to the menu and menus, and, you know, they've had some fairly convoluted systems before. But this one's great. This one's really easy. It's intuitive. It's streamlined, you know? All your options are on the right, and your items and stuff, and you can save from here at the touch of a button. Your Pokemon are all there on the left. You can just hit Y to pop one of them to the front. It's perfect. I love the auto heal feature. I love it. Saves so much time, does exactly what you need to do, always pulls the right items, and so that kind of gives you a reason to keep around regular potions, you know? They're not just kind of like taking up inventory space or whatever. Like, no, there's always a good reason to have regular potions because you want to auto heal and fill in those little bits. It's perfect, and I'm also pretty pleased with the game's options. Like, obviously, it could use more options, and there are some weird missing ones, but like, I don't know, I turned on the game and I was really thankful for the ones that I found. You know, you can turn off the prompts to learn moves and to send Pokemon to the box, which is great because it just speeds things along. Sometimes those prompts, they can just get in the way a lot. And of course, speeding up dialogue. Awesome, perfect, anything to just speed things up. Those are the options that I'm looking for. And there's a good number of them here. XP share is back in this game, and it is mandatory. If you've been watching my reviews of the last, like, you know, the Pokemon games of the Switch generation, you'll know that I have kind of a weird love-hate relationship with XP share. I don't like how you can, like, accidentally raise up a super strong Pokemon and evolve it from, like, Form 1 all the way to Form 3 without ever even seeing it, without ever bringing it into battle one time. That creates a really weird disconnect. It feels like you're really not even earning it. And like, whatever anyone says about anything, it should not be mandatory. It should be an option. Whatever you think it does for the game, let people turn it off. It's ridiculous not to. But then on the other hand, I also kind of like how much it cuts down on the grind. I really don't want to grind that much. And I also like, and that's where the weird love-hate thing is. It shouldn't be mandatory, but at the same time, if it wasn't mandatory, I would probably feel pressured to not use it, but then I kind of like how much it cuts down on that grind, so I'm kind of happy that I'm forced to use it. It's very strange, very confusing. But, like, it's easier than ever to make a team, you know, or just to, like, get a new member of the team and to raise them up without taking a bunch of extra effort or using up a bunch of XP candies or whatever. I think really my biggest problem with it overall is just that it's too much. You get too much XP. Your Pokemon that didn't fight in a fight, they should just get less. Even if you're gonna give XP to all of your Pokemon, I just feel like it's too much. It makes it just kind of too easy to overlevel, you know? It's like, I want to get stronger, but I don't want to get stronger quite that fast, you know? Because like I was saying, like, I don't want that pressure to like not mess around too much, not engage in too many side battles and side content and stuff because I'll accidentally get too powerful. I don't like that, and I feel like the XP share really has a big hand in that. And yeah, I had a really hard time with this in Sword and Shield as well. Like, you know, and you get so many XP candies, it was really hard not to use them because the option is like right there and the game just throws them at you. And you've got the same issue here with the XP candy if you're doing Terra Raid battles. It's the same thing, but it is another one of those things that is, it's the same problem, but it's so much easier to overlook when I am enjoying the game. It's still a bummer that I have to like police my own use of this kind of stuff. I don't like to have to design my own difficulty myself, but it's also convenient, and so, it just kind of is what it is, I guess. So, as we've covered plenty, Arceus had so many features that did not make it over to this game, and I was really scared that the move management system would not make it, but it did! It totally did. You can just switch around moves freely, your Pokemon, anytime you want. Just they've got a move pool, and you can switch them in and out. And yeah, like I said in that review, thank you, like there was a value to having to do it manually and losing a move forever and having to use an item to get it back or whatever. Like, I understand why that had value at the time, but I just feel like the time for that is done. Just let us experiment with whatever. Don't make move learning this big, important, difficult to reverse thing. Let us just play with it. It's good. I'm glad they finally came to that conclusion. Even better, when your Pokemon is taught a TM move, that move gets added to their pool. So you can override it and then they can relearn it again later. It's awesome. And that is of course great because TMs have gone back to being single use. Speaking of which, I really liked it when they made TMs unlimited use. That felt good. That felt like another kind of inevitability. Like, just why are you limiting it? Just once we get the TM, we should be able to just keep the TM. And they changed it back here, but they had a reason to change it back, and it is because you can now craft TMs. And I think that's great. I think that's a really great reason to change it back, because now TMs have a little bit more of a value, but like you're also more empowered to create those TMs, and just the concept of using various materials that come from like Pokemon themselves. It's just clever. It gives you another reason to get out there and fight as many Pokemon as possible and collect all these materials. It's just fun. It's another like just interesting addition to the concept. I personally didn't do a lot of like TM crafting, but that's because I'm not like super deep into the games and building up my Pokemon and figuring out like what the perfect loadouts are or whatever. But I can totally see that it's a really cool feature. So, as you might know, I'm the only person in the whole world, the only person on this planet who hates the EV system, and I get why people like it. Personally, I just feel like any system with like invisible stats is silly, where the game gives you tools to help you, but still doesn't really tell you what it is, and you still gotta use calculators and stuff. I just don't like it. Loved the grit system in Legends Arceus. Simple, straightforward, visible to the player. It was not perfect. It could have used some tweaks. I'm sad to see that they did not use that system and simply improve it over here. They just went straight back to EVs, and that makes me sad. I am sad. I hope that they can at least just change it in some way, combine the two systems, something a little bit more straightforward for the future, maybe. You know what is great though? Picnics. Picnics, they're nice. It's kind of a new spin on like the camping thing in Sword and Shield, but again, it's just another feature that I feel they just did better this time. It's just better. Everything about it is better. Feels more natural. You just kind of plunk down and you can still run around, and they play with balls and stuff, and you can pet them all, and it's just a really nice opportunity to just engage with your Pokemon, especially your Koraidon, Miraidon, your riding Pokemon. It's a really great opportunity to just connect with them, and you see all the fun animations they can do. They're really cute. And, oh my gosh, best feature in the game. How did it take so long in this review before I talked about sandwiches? I should have talked about that right at the beginning. You can make sandwiches, which is still so funny and so unexpected, but it's fun. You stack up the ingredients. You can get like a million different ingredients, and like, you know, your sandwiches will give you like temporary boosts to different stuff, which is just fun. This is fun. Though I will say, some of these sandwich recipes are a little disturbing. I don't like just the idea of like a piece of bread and you put jelly on it and then you just eat it. That's weird. That does not sit well with me. But hey, no sandwich shaming if that's your thing. I just thought that was unexpected. So I've really been looking forward to talking about towns. I was very disappointed by the towns in Sword and Shield. They looked okay, and like when closely examined, they did have some unique themes. There were some nice looking ones. I mean, out of all the stuff in the game, they certainly looked better than like the wild area. So like they were nice, and like, the mushroom town, that was a cool one. Yeah, I like that, okay. But they were also so limited by that standard fixed camera, that old-fashioned camera, and there wasn't really much to do, and they didn't really have that much of actual identity, so I don't know. I was pretty disappointed. Just kind of felt like a big missed opportunity. Scarlet and Violet's towns are a huge improvement. Not perfect. Absolutely not perfect at all. Still not much to do, and still like basically every town is going to have the same kinds of shops. Not a lot of buildings that you can actually go into. Whenever you go to a store or whatever, it's just like a pop-up menu. So like, yeah, it's still mostly just visual set pieces. A lot of effort can go into this in the future. The next time they have the time, the time to put in that effort. But they're so much better at feeling like real places, like seamlessly moving in and out of them and just being able to move the camera and explore them from every angle. It makes such a massive difference. Even if like functionally nothing is really that different. In some ways they're less functional than before because there's very little buildings you can go into. But just that change, that ability to approach them from any angle, and they really exist in the world. They're not like a separate loading screen. You can move the camera around. Now it just feels like a real place. It feels like a real town. And they're just so delightfully designed. All the different parts of the map have, you know, different industries based on the landscape and the natural resources surrounding them. The towns have all these really wonderful visual themes incorporating into those industries and themes. And then like seeing how the towns are built into and around the natural environment, you know, and seeing all the landscape beyond the town's borders. It's another one of those things that would look much better if it looked much better. But like you can see what the game is going for. You can see it enough. And then I think I'm particularly attached to the towns because I have this thing, like with pretty much any media, I've got this weird thing for like really clean, like really impossible, clean, kind of utopian places. You know what I'm saying? These like unrealistically nice, futuristic places, you know, kind of like a clean, modern house. But it's outside and it's everywhere and everything is perfect and everyone is happy. It's total escapist fantasy. It totally is. But I don't know, something about it really connects with me. It's so comfy, it's so pleasant, and that's what these towns are. You feel like there's not a speck of dirt on the ground anywhere. You could eat off the ground if you wanted to. You look around, you survey the place, and you're just like, okay, I clearly live in a perfect utopian future. This is great. If you want to talk about my favorite towns, I would say Levincia is awesome just because it's huge. It's colorful, the lights all over the place. It seems very just futuristic and fun, even if that is like the place in the game that runs the absolute worst for me. Just complete slow motion the whole time. But I love the vibe. And then Cascarafa. The waterfalls, the fountains with the cascading waterfalls that are massive. The whole entire city is multiple levels and you use elevators to go up and down. It's just terrific. It's the kind of place that just does not exist anywhere, but like seeing it here, I get to experience that. I get to pretend that that kind of place is real, if just temporarily. Really nice. So even if they didn't have time to make these towns a little deeper and to design some things that we could actually go inside, I feel like they could have really done a lot to offset that disappointment if they had just given us like side quests. Like all you gotta do is just like pepper NPCs everywhere, and they flag you down and they're just like, hey, can you go get this item for me? Can you go beat these 5 Pokemon over here? Really just kind of anything. Legends Arceus had side quests, a whole huge list of them. I feel like it would not be that hard to implement something like that here. You could even do like the Skyrim thing where they're basically procedurally generated. It's just like, hey, can you go blank this many blank? And just like, whatever. They just repeat endlessly. Who cares? And I know that kind of thing is totally shallow, but it's just another thing where it's something to do. You're enjoying playing the game. You just want something to do. I feel like that would have been pretty easy. Or like at the very least, just like through the school. Extra credit, extracurricular activities. Go do these nonsense things. That would have been nice. And speaking of the school, overall, I think they did a pretty good job of like using the school as a setting and having like, you know, actual functionality to it. I feel like they probably could have done more, but you know, there's like a good number of like classes you can take. There's actually a pretty good amount of classes that you can take kind of throughout the course of the game. You return to these classes multiple times and they even like give you information and there's like a midterm and a final test. And so that's fun. You get some extra little stuff if you do it. I was actually kind of surprised to find some actual useful information in a couple of these classes. They'd like drop a little bit of info and I'm like, I didn't know that. That's actually really interesting. More than anything though, the main reason these classes exist is to let you get to know your teachers. It's to kind of just integrate you into this school setting and to introduce and develop these teacher characters. And now we are finally talking about the school and the characters, so it is finally time to fully enter this section, this part of the review. The open world element is great. That is one of this game's absolute biggest strengths. One of just the biggest pillars that this game is built upon is the open world thing. But to me, this game has 2 major pillars. 2 pillars wouldn't be very strong, it'd fall over. Some other metaphor. It's got 2 major thingies that make it really, really fantastic. And the other thingy is, I guess you could kind of just wrap it all up into writing. It's the writing, it's the scenario, it's the story, it's the plot, it's the characters. And I know I've spent a lot of time reflecting on Sword and Shield. This is the last time. This is the last major time that I will compare these two games. I thought the story and characters in that game, awful. Simply awful. Most of the characters were like kind of just whatever, but almost none of them were interesting in any way. Hop was good. Hop was a good character, a genuinely good character. Had a really interesting dynamic as a rival. He was the little brother of the current champion. Like, that's cool. And like, he had really good motivation. He was good. But that was it. None of the other characters were interesting to me at all. And even worse, there was just no story. There was barely a story there at all. It was so bare bones. It was the same old song and dance. You're a kid, set out on your Pokemon quest, be a champion, be the best, blah, blah, blah. There's like a slight story going on in the background, like about Dynamax energy or something, but like all the important plot stuff happens off screen, clearly, so they wouldn't have to animate any of it, and like the whole entire thing culminates into a conclusion that just kind of happens, doesn't even really make sense. You know, it just kind of happens, and then it's like, okay, that was the thing that happened. And I guess we're done now. None of it landed. It was just a bad story. It felt like so little effort had been put into the the scenario, yeah, just the writing. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet is not just an improvement in this regard. This is an extreme 180. This is coming to a screeching halt and then just rocketing in the exact opposite direction. I mean, I was already completely surprised by the story and the characters in Arceus. I thought that was really great. And even then, I was still surprised by how good this game was. How much I genuinely connected with this story and with these characters. So the game's been out for a long time, so I am talking spoilers here if there's anybody watching this that has not played the game yet or cares, you know? So the school concept is a really, really great way to frame the game. Like already right off the bat, I think that's a really fun concept. You're not just setting out on an adventure, like no, you're enrolling in a Pokemon Academy. Like that already sets it apart from other Pokemon games. I'm tired of the old setup. I don't want same old, same old. But we've got something different here. So that changes the setting for one, but then you are tasked not just with becoming a champion, because that's what you do in the Pokemon world, but no, you are tasked with improving yourself, with going out and finding something that is special to you and improving yourself and other people as well, helping others, becoming a part of the community. It's so much more uplifting. There's so much more of a community element to it, and I love that. It really affects just the spirit and the tone of the game. And the really great thing about the school is that it kind of acts as like a central hub. You have a reason to return to the school again and again, especially if you want to do these classes. This allows the game to provide you with characters that you will see again and again and again. A really big problem with past Pokemon games is they're so linear and you're always moving from town to town. So the only time you see a character multiple times is usually if you just bump into them, if the game is programmed to make you bump into them multiple times. The game's like, okay, well the player is gonna see this character exactly 5 times. They're gonna bump into them here, 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 and here, and that's it. And that really limits how much you can develop a character and make the player connect with a character. But the school gives you that chance to keep returning and to keep seeing them and developing them, and it really runs with this idea. You've got a lot of teachers, and you learn about them in class and outside of class, and they've all got little subplots that progress as you play through the game. They're all interesting in their own ways. They've got backstories and aspirations, like they're people. They're people. They're not just like robotic NPCs who are put there to help you in your own quest. They are their own people. Each one is unique. They've all got really fun. I mean, like all the characters in this game, just visually, they're designed really well. They've got these really like silly, kind of over the top, just visual themes in their hair and their costumes and stuff, but like it's totally fun. And they're all fun to interact with. And then you got Director Clavel. I really love him. He's got this like really stern demeanor, but like he's also just really sweet. He's really wholesome. And he's got his whole alter ego thing where he's pretending to be a kid. It's so hilariously stupid. I really love it. So the school is like your base of operations, but then the game's got 3 major storylines, which is very, very clever because, yeah, it's open world. It's really nice to just have a variety of stuff to do. And the most traditional storyline is naturally the one that sees you traveling to all the different towns, to all the 8 gyms in order to collect badges and fight the Elite Four and become the champion. I like it because it's not the entire focus of the game, because that's what I was getting tired of, but it's still there because it's still enjoyable. You get to have your cake and eat it too. Your rival this time around is Nimona, and she is fantastic. I love Nimona. They've gone with another really great angle for your rival. She is the current champion. Like, she's really, well, like maybe a couple years older than you at the most, and she's just the champion. It's such a great dynamic to meet that person and to have them actually like kind of be your companion. She's your rival, but she's also like helping you out. She's really humble, and she is coaching you because she sees so much promise in you that she wants you to grow up to be a really great Pokemon trainer so that she can fight you, because she wants to fight someone who is on the same level as her. I love it. Such a good dynamic. She's got just such a unique relationship with the player. And like, she even raises up a whole new team right at the start of the game, like just for fighting with you, which is just really cute. She's really funny too, because she's like super duper eager to fight you. Like, there's a bunch of times when the other characters have to be like, no, it's not time for that right now. You guys can fight later. They're like, leave him alone. You can't just challenge him to fights all the time. It's so good. And it's also just so good-natured, you know? I think it's been a long time since we've had the rival that's really just kind of a jerk. I'm okay with that existing, but I think that this is a new and interesting way to do like the happy, good-natured rival. Oh man, and then the gym leaders. I love the gym leaders in this game. I don't usually have so much fondness for gym leaders. I feel like they're usually a little bit forgettable to me, or at least just they don't stick in my mind. These ones, they all have such cool visual designs. Every single one of them has their own vocation. They've all got their own ways that they give back to the community, and it always plays into the themes of the towns that they live in. You know, like one manages a restaurant, one is an artist, one is a streamer, and at first she's really annoying, but then you start to get the feeling that she's doing this very cynically, and it's funny. One's a rapper! What a surprise! That was amazing. They've all got so much personality. They're just so memorable. And I love how a lot of them have their own separate relationships with other characters that you meet in the game. One of the gym leaders is like best friends with one of the teachers at the academy. One of the gym leaders is the sister of one of the teachers at the academy. And that's another really just fun thing about this game that feels like so much care was put into it, is this world exists beyond you. So many of the characters that you meet have pre-existing relationships with the other characters in the game. Just makes all of it so much more special and memorable. But yeah, back to the gym leaders though. Larry, who doesn't love Larry? Definitely a favorite of mine, probably my favorite. I mean, come on, like the idea of like they all have these ridiculous get-ups and the hair and everything, and then you see Larry and he's just like this, like straight-laced, kind of by the numbers, but also just kind of like run down businessman. It's just funny. Such a funny angle. And then of course, just like the gym experience itself is also really fun. And I'm really glad that they have continued experimenting with new types of gym challenges rather than just having like a weird puzzle room where you fight trainers and then that's it. That got a little bit old. So here they're kind of continuing the idea from Sword and Shield, where there's just kind of like these individual little challenges. You never really know what it's going to be, but this time they fleshed it out a lot more. They're just always fun. There's just a wide range of things that you get to do before you challenge a gym leader, and they're all fun. Oh man, and then the battles themselves. I have fought a lot of Pokemon battles in my day, but this game proves that just a really good punchy presentation, just like the visual spectacle and the music, that can make a Pokemon battle feel exciting all over again. Nothing beats these gym fights. their little like monologues and quips throughout the battle, the animations, all the flashy stuff, and the music. One of my favorite things about the whole game. I'm not kidding. If you like put all the things I love about it all in a row and you rank them all, this is so high. It's so close to the top. It's so simple, but I love it. At the end of the fight, when they get to their last Pokemon, they will always terrestrialize that Pokemon, and that introduces a new music cue. The music changes, and then like it's really cool, but then if they terrestrialize and you do, but they go before you, then when it cuts back to you, and it's just something about the way that it lines up with the music, and then the audience comes in and they're singing along too. Goosebumps. Like, no joke. Goosebumps every single time. I live for that moment. It's just indescribable. And to double down, quadruple down, or whatever on a point from earlier, it's all the more effective because the game is so enjoyable, because so much about it works. I am able to give myself to the game on an emotional level. I'm able to immerse myself in it. I let it excite me. I feel like I'm really there. I'm having such a good time that when I'm going against a gym leader and we're actually kind of evenly matched and I'm not actually sure who's gonna win and we're both on our last Pokemon and it's just all down to this, it's super intense, and then we terrestrialize and that music kicks in, I just like, my gosh, it's something else. Like, this is really just one of the reasons why this game is ranking so high up there in terms of just like experiences, just Pokemon experiences that I have had, you know? And then when you beat all the gym leaders, getting to the Elite Four, that's always fun. There's this weird little test at the beginning of it, like a test where they just ask you questions and you give answers. I think that's a really fun idea, and I liked the intensity of it, but it is weird that if you answer a question wrong, even though like it's not clear at all like what the right answer even should be, and it's gonna vary from person to person, but if you get one wrong, you lose and have to do it again. Pretty awkward. They really shouldn't have done it like that, but I still thought it was an interesting idea. But the Elite Four fights themselves are really great. Again, the characters are great. One of the Elite Four is a little girl, like a 4-year-old girl or something. And then one of them is just Larry again. Because Larry does whatever job his boss tells him to do. And she told him, you know, be a gym leader over here. Okay, I will. You know what? We need to fill a spot for the Elite Four as well. Okay, yeah, I'll do it. I love it. It's so funny. The next storyline revolves around Team Star. There's a gang of kids from the academy. They're causing all sorts of trouble, mayhem, hooliganry, all that kind of stuff. And Director Clavel tasks you with figuring out what their whole deal is and bringing them down. I love this whole thing for so many reasons. I love how, like, instead of just this being a group of bad guys, this concept, this element of the game gets to be its own entire subplot. It gets to basically be 1/3 of the story. This lets you really explore what's going on. And you know, the concept of the bad person team in Pokemon, it's getting old. You know, just a bunch of nameless grunts blindly obeying some evil organization or whatever. It's just not really doing it for me anymore. And I think the same is probably true for the Pokemon Company themselves, because you've seen them trying to, you know, experiment with this, even in Sword and Shield. The bad person team, they were just like groupies. They were just like fans of a person. And I thought that was really clever. And here, it's another new, interesting spin. So these are, on the surface, a bunch of hooligans. A bunch of ne'er-do-wells. They're up to no good. They're causing trouble. They're not showing up to class. And I really love, by the way, how lax the rules are in this world. Because, like, Director Clavel is like, you're gonna have to get these folks to shape up, or else I'm afraid I have no other choice but to expel them. It's like, in the real world, no, you would have expelled them immediately when they stopped showing up to class. Now you'd be considering if you should call the police on them. Anyway, so the leaders of this group, they're all these just like flamboyant personalities. They've got these crazy costumes and all that stuff, all the posturing, all of that big, like, you know, anime flair, the dramatic. But then, the more you dig into the story, you slowly start to realize that these are just kids. I mean, they're literally kids. They come from the school, but then you're like, oh, but they really actually are just kids, though. And not only that, these are kids who were hurt by the other kids. They felt like they were at the bottom of the pole, bottom of the pecking order or whatever. And they're doing all of this posturing, all of these theatrics to try and make themselves feel more powerful. It's the classic example of people who are hurt, then going on to hurt other people. And as you bring them down, you get to see their flashbacks, where they're all like building up their team and working together, and they're designing their costumes, and it's just so like humanizing and really touching. This isn't just an interesting new spin on the team concept, it's something so much more emotional. So if Nimona is kind of like the main character of the Become a Champion storyline, Penny is the main character of this one. As a character, I feel like I probably connected to her the least, but that makes sense. It's probably just because she is so, like, quiet and reserved. I do like her, though. Her design is fun. How can you not like that backpack? I've never, like, seen a fictional character that is just, like, their likability is hinged completely on their backpack. It's just, it's really nice. So Penny originally seems like she's just another student and she's helping you beat Team Star because that's what Clavel wanted her to do. But it turns out that she's actually doing it because she's really their secret leader and she just wants the whole entire thing to just stop. And by the end, it really does just stop. You beat all of them, everybody just realizes what they were doing and they just go, I really just don't want to do this anymore. Let's just kind of stop. And I could easily see someone thinking that that was kind of anticlimactic. You know, when it turns out they really are just a bunch of kids and they break up the gang because they just don't want to do it anymore. But it's not like that at all. It's not anticlimactic. The end of the arc gives it so much more emotional weight, you know? The misbehavior, the theatrics, it was all just for show. It was a symptom of what these kids had been going through. So I feel like them all just kind of like hugging it out and being like, you know what, like, it's cool, let's just be cool now. I feel like that's a perfect conclusion. It's not flashy, and in that way, like, that's what makes it interesting, you know? It really is just a natural and satisfying conclusion. I did see the twist coming from about a mile away, unfortunately, that she was actually the secret leader. However, the fake twist that Director Clavel, like him pretending that he was the secret leader, I thought that was really, really fun. It's a fun play on the whole, like, obvious secret villain trope that you see a lot, so I thought that was a really just clever little thing to throw in there. Oh, and I should also mention before we move on that each time you take on a Team Star member, you basically storm their base. And during these little sequences, you get to send out 3 of your own Pokemon and auto-battle your way through the crowd, and you gotta, like, beat a certain number of Pokemon within a time limit. And, this is, unfortunately, ridiculously easy. It's super simple. There's, like, basically no way that you can fail if your Pokemon are high enough level. And all of the activity and all the auto-battling really makes the game run pretty terribly. But you know what? I love it. I mean, come on. You're storming a base. You're kicking down the door and running in and letting your Pokemon run all over the place and beat up all the other Pokemon. You're like, where's your leader? I'm gonna destroy everybody. It's cool. You know, it's the reason auto-battling is cool in the first place. It's active. It's more real. And I really, really do hope to see more stuff like this in future games because it's just too cool to not pursue more. Keep your turn-based battles for as long as you want. Just supplement with this kind of thing. And then, of course, the third storyline is all about, well, I mean, it's kind of about a lot, actually. It's not quite as straightforward as the other storylines, because it kind of ties in with the game's overall story, its central mystery. So I guess before we get into it, let's talk about that central mystery. In the center of the region is this giant crater surrounded by super high mountains. No one really knows exactly what's in the crater, which they call Area Zero. There have been some expeditions, but no one really knows if the info that came from them is true. Most people aren't even allowed down there. It's like it's forbidden. It's too risky to even explore. And there are rumors of scary, dangerous Pokemon living in there. And there's obviously something weird going on down there because this is also where people discovered Terra energy, which led to the development of the whole terastallizing thing. This is a really terrific setup. I love this, because like with any media, you know, game, book, movie, show, whatever, I love a really nice mystery. The kind of mystery that just kind of looms over everything from the start. It really colors the whole experience, you know? Like, you have no idea what is going on, and you know that eventually you're gonna figure it out, and that idea is so tantalizing, it keeps you motivated. You know eventually you are gonna have to head down into that crater, and considering all the things that people say about it and just how weird and mysterious it is, that idea is kind of terrifying. The mystery of Area Zero alone is enough to make this my favorite story setup of any Pokemon game. I mean, easily. And from the beginning, the plot develops in so many more interesting ways than I expected. This is Pokemon. I don't know, I didn't expect so many twists and turns. So at the start of the game, you meet this weird Pokemon, either Koraidon or Miraidon, and it's either an ancient or a futuristic-looking version of a Pokemon that already exists, which is a mystery in itself. Thing is, it seems like something bad has happened to it, you know? It looks powerful, but it's lacking its normal abilities and can't even fight. It just, like, has not the ability to fight. And the game does a great job of giving this Pokemon a lot of personality, like huge How to Train Your Dragon vibes, and I love it. I immediately connected with my Miraidon, you know? This is your constant companion, you're riding them around all over the place, so you're always with them. But then you have more, you have, you know, cutscenes, cute animations in there, and you got picnics, and all that kind of stuff. And I gotta say, having the box art legendary as your main companion, and it's also like integrated into the central mystery of the story, and it's not just like, oh, this is a legendary Pokemon, it's just so rare and so powerful, but there's more to it than that, and its origins. I just think that's really, really clever. And it's like a lot of different things in this game where they've taken something that's been one way for so long and they've just kind of put a new spin on it. Everything about this legendary is just fresh. Yeah, how you find it, how it helps you explore the world by unlocking new abilities. And then, sorry for jumping around, but then, like, the way that it finally regains the ability to fight at the end, and it fights another version of itself, just all of that stuff, it's so satisfying. And then it's like a way, you know, at the end you get to actually use the Pokemon in your day-to-day life, even though you've had the Pokemon this whole time, so it's like a new way to acquire a Pokemon, a legendary Pokemon, without actually going and catching it. Again, it's just kinda new. Okay, so back to the stories. On the surface, this third storyline is about Titan Pokemon. You meet this guy, Arvin, who ropes you into this whole thing where you're tracking down these special herbs so you can help Koraidon/Miraidon regain its abilities and get back to full strength. The Pokemon guarding these herbs are Titans, Pokemon that have used the power of the herbs to just get extra huge and mean. And these Titan battles are a ton of fun. You know, it's just like raid battles, it's just a big boss battle. Some giant Pokemon, you're teaming up. It's really fun to fight them along with Arvin. Some of the fights were decently tough, but I have to say, I think maybe my favorite part about them was just discovering what Pokemon the Titans were. As you are probably learning, I just love mysteries, you know, and there's this mysterious creature, and we're describing it kind of like this. It's this kind of monster, and then, like, you get the reveal of, like, what it actually is. It's just fun. However, I want to highlight one particular Titan battle. Okay, so I'm going along. You know, I've done a few of these by now. Big crab, big fish. Okay, so it's like regular Pokemon, but they're big. Okay, I get it. And then I come across Iron Treads. This was my very first exposure to a Paradox Pokemon. I had heard the name, I'd heard Paradox Pokemon somewhere in the marketing or something, but I didn't really know what it meant. And going into the game, at no point did I expect to run into a futuristic robot Donphan. Did not quite see it coming. No, not even just a robot Donphan. Some sort of robot that kind of looks like it's imitating a Donphan or something. I might be alone here. I think I probably am alone here. I haven't really heard anyone else talk about this. But I am not joking when I say that this was terrifying. It was terrifying. I've always had this thing where beings from other places just kind of scare me, you know? Like, aliens or creatures from another dimension. It's just like, I find the idea terrifying because such a creature would be so different. Their very brains would work so differently. Like, what is this thing thinking? What does it want? Why does it even exist? What does its existence even mean for me? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's just always been something that's really resonated with me in a very spooky way with those kinds of creatures. And I got that feeling here, because Pokemon have always had a certain friendliness to them, you know? Like, they love being friends. They're basically like people on the inside. We can't exactly speak their language, but like, we all understand each other. They understand us. We can easily communicate. And even like the weird legendaries usually have some element of humanity to them. But the idea of some kind of weird dimensional phenomenon down in a mysterious forbidden area where a weird robot Pokemon mimicking real Pokemon, where they're wandering around and we don't know what kind of world they could possibly come from, or like why they exist if they don't even really come from a world, they're just a paradox. But then how does that happen? What kind of creature is just born as a paradox? What does that even mean? What's going through their heads? And now they're escaping the crater and they're getting out into the wild. It's scary. I don't think it's supposed to be scary, but I found it scary. And like, obviously these things aren't like evil necessarily, because eventually you put it together that your companion Pokemon, oh look at that, like this is a paradox Pokemon. My Miraidon is a paradox version of this other Pokemon. Okay, which is awesome, by the way. Very, very cool revelation. But like, I don't know, at first it really did hit me in a way that just kind of scared me. That Iron Treads, it scared me. You look at it closer and you're like, no, its face is down there. It's not really a Donphan. It's weird. And you know what? That creepy feeling made exploring Area Zero at the end all the more fun. Like, all the way through. Like, this place is beautiful and the sunlight's all sparkly and nice. I'm just freaked out. Just freaked out the whole time. Seeing all these weird alternate dimension robot Pokemon, it was just so like fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. And even if none of this is a common thing for people to feel, I cannot even tell you how thankful I am for it, because I enjoyed it so much. I can't even describe how much that made me love this game even more. It was just such a fascinating element that I would have never expected. And I'm really, really glad I played Violet instead of Scarlet, because I don't think I would have found those Paradox Pokemon very scary. They just kind of look like caveman versions or something. So this, I don't know, it was just cool. I really, really lucked out there. So it is finally time. We need to talk more about Arvin. I have not played every Pokemon game, but I've played most of them. And Arvin is the best character. There it is. I said it. Arvin is the best Pokemon character ever. He's so much more than he lets on at first, and he develops so much throughout the game. When you first meet him, he's kind of a jerk. Like, I didn't like him at first. He was not very likable. But the more you work with him, the nicer he is to you, and kind of the more he opens up and you start to learn about him. And this stinking guy, how can you pack so much gut-wrenching emotion into one character? Okay, let me steel myself here before I get into this. Jeez. Okay, here we go. Learning about Arvin and his past is just one gut punch after another. Depending on the version of the game you're playing, the professor currently studying Area Zero is either Sada or Turo. And I think that's really cool because it's another thing. They're doing a different version of the professor thing. The professor is usually this friendly, kindly old person who helps you along on your adventure. And that is just really not the case this time at all. Kind of a little, like just enough to kind of keep you off your guard, but that's it. You eventually learn that this person is actually Arvin's parent. Not only that, but they've spent his whole life doing research and have completely neglected him. When you learn this, his entire character is recontextualized. He's kind of gruff, you know, he's got this slightly self-centered, kind of selfish attitude. That is a direct result of being rejected by his parent. This is the personality he had to develop to protect himself. Ugh. And then you think about his love of cooking, making sandwiches in particular. He loves doing it. And that's when you realize, oh, he had to learn how to prepare food on his own because nobody else was doing it for him. Ugh. Not just a fun character trait, but something that he had to develop. Ugh. It gets so much worse, though, is the thing. It gets so much worse. So, okay, so as you collect the Herba Mystica, those special herbs I was talking about, you get these little hints that he's hiding something, you know? He's feeding this stuff to some other Pokemon that we haven't seen. And it seemed kind of ominous to me at first, especially because of his kind of gruff personality. I'm like, is there something weird going on here? Secret villain, maybe? And then you learn his secret. He's got a Mabostiff, a gray old dog Pokemon. It is sick and can't seem to get better. Mabostiff was injured when protecting him because he went down into Area Zero to go after his parent. And then you realize this Pokemon is so important to him because it was his only companion growing up. Stop! Stop! It's too much. It's too much. Ugh. I want to highlight one scene in particular. Okay, well, I don't want to. I don't want to highlight this scene, but I gotta do my job, don't I? Arvin reveals Mabostiff. Suddenly, the tension is broken, and we see that all of his motivations boil down to this. His soul is exposed. It's already a really emotional moment. But then he gives it some of the Herba Mystica, and the Pokemon opens its eyes. And Arvin says, "It's been so long since he was able to open his eyes. I was so worried." And I burst into tears. Just the weight of those words. Just such a small amount of words. 2 little sentences. They tell such a massive, heartbreaking story. And it hit me really, really hard. The whole thing was sad, but my gosh, that right there, like those lines. And you know what? I cried during the other Mabostiff scenes too. And when I was writing this, I had to go and look up the wording of those sentences, and that made me cry too. What the heck? What the heck? Where did this come from? Again, this is a Pokemon game. What is this? I don't even usually respond like that to emotional stuff in games, or even like usually movies or anything. Like if it's supposed to be emotional, it is very rare that it's actually going to hit me in that way. I just don't usually connect that strongly with characters. But Arvin, man, like his whole story hits me so hard. It's so overwhelmingly sad. You can see the pain his parent has caused him. You can see how long he's struggled. And to have his partner Pokemon injured on top of that, Arvin really made this game special. But one reason his whole arc works so well is because, once again, let's say it, it's because everything works well. All of these 3 main stories converge into the game's final chapter, where you head down into Area Zero to get to the bottom of things. Arvin, Nemona, and Penny go with you, and even here, there's development. These people start out all kind of hating each other. They come from very different places. Their personalities completely clash. They bicker the entire time you are heading down into the crater. But then we get to see them start to connect as they work together. And then the game's finale is, like so many aspects of this story, so much more than I ever expected. It turns out the professor is actually dead already, and we've been talking to a robot version of them, which makes sense when you look back and you realize, oh yeah, I've only ever seen them right there in that screen from that exact position, and I've never seen them like move or emote or anything. And then the final fight, it's this whole sequence with this giant portal machine, and they're literally catching and pulling Paradox Pokemon from other dimensions to battle you with. And you've got the whole showdown where your companion fights with the other version of itself. And yeah, if you've played the game, you know all that stuff I'm talking about. It's a whole thing. There's too much to even properly go into. But it is awesome. That's all I can say, I guess. This ending is so epic and so cool, and visually it's really interesting. It's like, this is the game right here. Like, this is the quality that we are looking for. And it's just so much more epic and fun than I would have ever expected. And of course, this is where Arvin's arc wraps up. We get all these extra emotional, more crying moments, thank you. And the whole game comes to such a satisfying conclusion. By the end, you and your friends are all a team. You have formed an unlikely friend group. And it's not just forced on you, you know? It's not just like this cheery video game ending where everything works out okay. This joining, it doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel shallow. The game didn't just tell you, these people are friends now, the end. It feels real, it feels earned, it feels like they really didn't like each other, but then they came to like each other and respect each other through all of this adversity and working together, and so by the end, you feel it. I really feel something for the connection that the characters have by the end. So when they're shown hanging out with each other during the credits, I feel that. I care about all the game's characters by the end. I care about every thread of the story. All of it lands. All of it is interesting and well written. All of it. And like I said, this all just elevates a game that was already so much fun. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet has serious issues. Really serious. Its presentation is so poor. Many elements of the game feel so rushed. It needed a lot more time in the oven, and it's very frustrating to see how the game could have been. It's frustrating to see the good work that the team put in overshadowed by these completely avoidable problems created by the executive staff at the Pokémon Company. They don't deserve that. The game doesn't deserve that. We don't deserve that. Looking past those issues, what I've found here is a Pokémon experience unlike anything else. It's an absolute mess, but there's also just so much to enjoy. Between the open world and the terrific story and characters, it has been an adventure to remember. The more I enjoy about a game, the more I am willing to put into it emotionally. And this game did enough right that I was really willing to invest myself. Because of that, and because of its open structure, I found myself just naturally living out these epic stories all on my own. I formed bonds with my Pokémon. We lived through these little adventures together. We fought some of the most intense, nail-biting battles I've ever fought. It's totally silly. I'm slightly embarrassed to admit it, but I really mean it. I let my imagination go wild. Late in the game, I found a Frigibax. I could just tell by looking at him that he was gonna turn into some kind of cool dragon. So I brought him on the team, and I came up with this whole headcanon where it was the newcomer, but it was like super dedicated to being strong. Just as strong as the rest of the team, if not stronger. And I would sometimes have it fight against Pokemon over its level because it felt like that was what it wanted, you know? It really wanted to prove itself. And it would lose, but that would only strengthen its resolve. And multiple times, I found myself losing battles, and this little guy was the last line of defense, and it wouldn't win, and it would feel terrible about it. I felt so bad for it. Just again and again, its spirit was getting beaten down, but it always stood back up again. And then one day, during a super important story battle, it finally did it. The whole battle came down to just two Pokemon, came down to the very move. and right when I thought it was over, at exactly the right time, the opponent's attack missed, and my Baxcalibur landed a critical hit, which was just enough damage to win the battle, and it was glorious. That little Frigibax grew up, and it finally earned the title of my strongest fighter, and it saved the day when it mattered most. Things like that can only happen when you are invested, when you are very invested. And you can only be that invested when a game feels worth investing into. It has to provide. It has to meet you halfway. It has to give you the tools to use and the motivation to want to invest. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, for all its flaws, did that for me. The result was one of the most thrilling Pokémon experiences of my life. Legends Arceus hit me that way too, but in some different ways, so I can only imagine what a future Pokémon game might be like if it combined these two games, taking all of the best parts of both. That idea is very exciting. It's exciting. We can only hope. Before we wrap up this review, I've saved the most important thing for last, the Pokémon themselves. I am pretty picky about my Pokémon. I think it's cool that they've all got these like crazy complex origins and meanings and all that stuff, but I don't like it when they're just too goofy, you know, too gimmicky. I liked very few of the new Pokémon in Sword and Shield. I wanted to only use new Pokémon, and I had a genuinely hard time filling out my party. But I love loads of the Paldean Pokemon. This time, I had a hard time deciding who to leave behind. There were just so many great ones. I wasn't ultimately a fan of the final evolutions of any of the three starters. I think Meowscarada might be my favorite, so I kind of regretted not picking Sprigatito, so definitely disappointing. But I love lots of other Paldean Pokemon, and I want to give special shout-outs to two in particular. And funny enough, they are both kind of alternates of much older Pokemon. Clodsire is an alternate evolution you get when you evolve a Paldean Wooper, and it is the most precious Pokemon in the world. I was zipping through the swamp one day, and I screeched to a halt when I saw it, and I instantly fell in love. I mean, I'm not kidding, like, instant top 10 Pokemon in mere seconds. I want to hug Clodsire so bad. It would be slimy and probably stinky, but I don't care. So the concept of regional variants that have different evolutions is so cool. Such a clever concept. But this game introduces Pokemon that look like other well-known Pokemon, but aren't actually related. And I also fell instantly in love with one of these Pokemon, and that Pokemon is Toedscool. I don't care much for Tentacool. Really not that much at all. But, like, suddenly, you take it and you turn it into a mushroom, and its tentacles are mycelium that it uses as feet and runs around like the TV from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Again, just instant love. Forever. Forever, eternal, until the end of the universe, love. I've become really interested in mycology recently. Like, I already think mushrooms are super cool, and then this little weirdo comes into my life. It was fate. I cannot even tell you how much time I have spent auto-battling with my Toedscool, watching him kick the crud out of everybody, and laughing my head off. Thank you, Toedscool. I appreciate you. You're the real MVP. Don't tell Baxcalibur. Whoosh back, and thank you. That is it for my review of Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. I thank you greatly if you stuck through the entire thing. It is weird being in this position. It's very weird. I was such a harsh critic of Sword and Shield, so it's weird to have another very divisive set of games, and then, like, I'm on the positive side. Like, who knew? Who could have seen that coming? But let me know what you think about Scarlet and Violet down in the comments, all that good stuff. Thank you for watching. Have a good day. Goodbye. Walking away.